I want you to just imagine the scenario for a second. One completely ordinary day, the life you've built, I mean, everything, your kids, your home, this immense fortune you have, and then eventually even your own health. It's all just, well, systematically wiped out, no warning. But the ultimate gut punch is that the people who were supposed to comfort you, they show up and instead they tell you it's your fault.
Right. And that, I mean, that extreme, almost unbearable scenario is the very foundation of the narrative we're diving into today, the ancient story of Job. It's a foundational text that cuts right to the heart of, well, the human experience, really. It explores suffering, the integrity of God, and the ultimate test of faith.
Yeah, and our sources take us through this whole dramatic epic. We see Job's life in this land of Uz, his rapid descent into just unimaginable suffering, and then this long theological battle with his closest friends. And it all leads to this powerful conclusion where, trust and divine wisdom ultimately silence human logic.
And our mission today isn't just to summarize the story. We really want to analyze the core insights here. We're trying to extract the nuances about what tested faith really looks like and distill what the texts reveal about God's wisdom versus, the often judgmental, conventional wisdom of humanity when we're faced with the unknown.
Okay, so let's set the scene with the man himself. The sources are very clear on this. Job was blameless, upright, he feared God, and he stayed away from evil. And he wasn't just a good man, he was a titan of his community, the greatest man among all the people of the East. His wealth was, well, it was staggering.
The scale is just incredible. I mean, think about it. 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 oxen, 500 donkeys, and more importantly, he had 7 thriving sons and 3 daughters. He had, for all intents and purposes, the perfect life.
He really did. Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Starting with the highly unusual celestial wager that sets this whole tragedy in motion.
Right, because what's so fascinating is that the conflict doesn't even start on Earth. The sources describe this heavenly meeting when the angels are presenting themselves before God, and Satan comes along with them. He says he's been roaming throughout the earth, going back and forth on it. And he's sort of like a cynical inspector, looking for flaws.
And God actually initiates the conversation. He basically brags about Job, calling him peerless, blameless, and upright, fearing God and shunning evil. But Satan, who just sees all good deeds as self-serving, he doesn't buy it for a second. He immediately fires back. Does Job fear God for nothing?
And that one statement, that question, it holds the entire theological weight of the book. Satan's claim is that Job's faithfulness is purely transactional. He suggests God has protected Job with a hedge, a kind of boundary of divine protection and blessing, and that is the only reason Job is loyal. Remove the hedge, let Satan strike his possessions, and he is sure Job will curse God to his face.
That's a crucial point for you to remember. The hedge is the symbol of safety based on a quid pro quo relationship. God blesses, Job obeys. Satan is arguing that without the blessing, the obedience just evaporates. And God agrees to the test, but with a really ironclad constraint. He tells Satan, very well, everything he has is in your power, but do not lay a finger on the man himself.
It's a test of integrity, really.
Yeah.
It's designed to prove that genuine faith can exist outside of material reward. And the catastrophe that follows is it's shocking in its speed. Job is at home, and these messengers just start arriving in this relentless compounding cascade of disaster.
And that compounding trauma is so key. Messenger 1 runs in, the Sabians attacked, stole the oxen and donkeys, killed the servants, and before he can even catch his breath, Messenger 2 bursts in. He claims what's called the fire of God fell from the heavens and burned up all the sheep and more servants. There's no time to process the first loss.
And it doesn't stop. The third messenger reports that the Chaldeans, they formed 3 raiding parties and swept down on the camels. But the final, most devastating blow, the one that really makes all the material losses seem meaningless, that comes from the 4th messenger.
Yes, the 4th one rushes in with the news that all of Job's children were feasting together and a mighty wind struck the 4 corners of the house. It collapsed, and it killed all of them. All 7 sons and all 3 daughters. In just a matter of minutes, Job went from the richest man in the East to having lost everything.
And here's this extraordinary moment that the sources really highlight. Despite this rapid total collapse, Job tears his robe in grief, he shaves his head, but then he immediately falls to the ground in worship. And he proclaims, "Naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I will depart. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away." And the sources stress this critical detail. In all this, Job did not sin by charging God with wrongdoing.
So that initial test, the loss of everything he owned in his family, it failed to break his integrity. But Satan's not satisfied. He reappears before God, and God himself confirms Job still maintains his integrity, even though he was ruined without any reason.
Which leads to the second, deeper phase. It moves from external loss to this personal, physical destruction. Satan's counter-argument is just brutally self-interested. He says, skin for skin, a man will give all he has for his own life. He's arguing that if you strike Job's physical flesh and bones, then he'll surely curse God.
So the constraint gets updated. Job is delivered into Satan's hands, but he has to spare his life. And the sources then detail this horrific strike. Satan inflicts Job with painful boils, these inflamed, agonizing sores that cover his entire body from head to foot.
Job is now just a sight of absolute misery. He goes to the edge of the city, he's sitting in the ashes, and he's reduced to scraping his sores with a broken piece of pottery, just desperate for any relief. It's profound, visceral suffering.
And this is where the betrayal hits hardest. His wife, the last person he has left, she sees him in this state and she tells him, "Are you still holding on to your integrity? Curse God and die." I mean, that's just an impossible situation. She's demanding he choose death over enduring this unexplained suffering.
What she's really saying is that his faith hasn't paid off. But Job's response is this profound statement of enduring trust. He says, "You speak as one of the foolish women speaks. Shall we accept good from God and not also accept trouble?" And the sources are so meticulous here, they emphasize that even through this, Job did not sin with his lips.
But let's pause on that for a second, because Job is later going to curse the day he was born, right? So where's the line? Satan was convinced striking his flesh would make him curse God.
And that is the beautiful nuance we have to extract. Job's immediate response to his wife shows his foundational belief that God is the source of all things, both good and difficult. He maintains that. Cursing God means charging him with wrongdoing, saying God is malicious or unjust. His later cursing of his birth is an expression of profound anguish, wishing the suffering never happened. But it stops short of condemning the one who permitted it. He separates his grief from his judgment.
Okay, so soon after this lowest point, his three friends arrive. Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar. They came to mourn, comfort him, and, initially their reaction is exactly right. They wept aloud, they tore their robes, sprinkled dust on their heads, because Job was just completely unrecognizable.
And the sources highlight this remarkable gesture that followed. They sat with him on the ground for 7 days and 7 nights in complete, profound silence. That silence was the most perfect act of comfort they could offer. It acknowledged the sheer magnitude of his grief without trying to fix it or explain it.
But the silence broke. And it broke because Job signaled his despair first, cursing the day of his birth, wishing he had perished or died as he came from the womb. And that act of anguish, it gave the friends the opening they needed, not to continue comforting, but to act as judges.
This is where the intellectual and theological core of the book really starts. The friends were locked into what we call the conventional wisdom. It's a system of retributive justice that assumes if you suffer, you sinned. If you prosper, you're righteous. They just could not reconcile the scale of Job's destruction with the idea that he might actually be innocent.
So they began their accusations, and it's not out of malice, really, but out of this desperation to fit Job's reality into their neat theological box. They were trying to defend God's system more than help their friend.
Exactly. Eliphaz leads the charge, and he relies on tradition and experience. He basically argues that no innocent man ever suffered like this, therefore God is punishing the wicked, and Job must have some secret sin. It's a subtle but crushing accusation.
Then Bildad is even more pointed. He appeals to divine order and fairness. He questions how long Job will talk this way and then suggests that maybe Job's children sinned. He's implying their catastrophic death was somehow justified by their own actions. He says, God is fair, and if you were truly good, God would help you now.
And Zophar is the most aggressive of all. He just calls for immediate confession. He tells Job to stop being prideful and beg for mercy because God clearly sees his wickedness, despite everything Job is saying about his own innocence. And this just forces a massive confrontation.
The sources show a complete reversal of roles. The men who came to mourn became accusers, and Job, he refuses to cooperate. He defiantly clings to his innocence, says he knows his heart is clean, and he turns his anger toward the divine, accusing God of crushing him for no reason and of hiding while he suffers. It becomes this raw, desperate demand for justice.
Right. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the whole debate centers on the failure of transactional faith. The friends insisted that Job's reality must conform to their theological rulebook. They essentially erased Job's lived experience to protect their own doctrine. Job, by maintaining his innocence, he forced their entire system into crisis.
The exchange goes back and forth, speeches, rebuttals, deepening despair, until the true dramatic pivot point happens. After all the exhausted human rhetoric, God finally intervenes. The sources say God answered Job from the storm.
And that detail from the storm is so key. It signals overwhelming power and majesty. This isn't a gentle explanation, it's an awe-inspiring challenge. God's voice just thunders, asking, "Who is this that speaks without knowledge?" And then he launches this barrage of questions designed to humble Job's entire human perspective.
And the questions aren't about Job's sin, they're about Job's competence. Where were you when I laid the foundation of the earth? Can you command the morning? Can you guide the stars? I mean, the questions just establish the absolute boundary of human knowledge and authority.
God is essentially painting a picture of his mastery over creation that is just beyond anything Job could ever comprehend. He asks Job, "Can you hunt prey for the lion? Or provide food for the ravens? Can you manage the wild ox, the eagle, or, most tellingly, master these terrifying creatures of cosmic chaos?"
And this is where the specifics really matter. God asks, can you pull in Leviathan with a hook? Leviathan is often seen as the symbolic creature representing untamable chaos and immense, incomprehensible power. God is telling Job, you can't even master the untamed forces of nature, so how dare you attempt to judge or comprehend the moral economy of the entire universe?
That's the core message. God doesn't offer Job an explanation for the suffering. He never says, "Hey, here was the wager." Instead, God offers Job himself. And Job realizes his fundamental error was thinking he could understand or contain divine wisdom within the framework of human logic.
And Job is he's immediately silenced and humbled by this overwhelming display of majesty. His first response is so simple and contrite. He just says, I am nothing. What can I say to you? I put my hand over my mouth.
He moves from demanding a logical explanation to choosing trust based on the sheer reality of God's power and scope. His second, more reflective response shows true repentance. He says, "I know that you can do all things. No plan of yours can be stopped. Now I have seen you with my own eyes. I take back what I said, and I am sorry for what I said in my pain." He chooses trust over understanding.
And the narrative wraps up with this dramatic restoration and vindication. Crucially, God addresses the friends first. He tells Eliphaz that he and his friends have not spoken the truth about me like my servant Job has.
This is so critical. Job had challenged God's justice, but the friends challenge God's integrity by insisting he only operates within their limited system. So God commands them to offer a burnt offering, and Job is commanded to pray for them, which completely reverses the roles.
Yeah.
It makes the victim an advocate for his accusers.
And when Job prayed for his friends, God was pleased and restored Job's fortunes. Not just restored, but gave him twice as much as before. 14,000 sheep, 6,000 camels, 1,000 oxen, and 1,000 donkeys. He was also given another 7 sons and 3 daughters.
He didn't just survive the test, he thrived on the other side. The sources note he lived another 140 years, saw his children and his grandchildren to the 4th generation, and died an old man full of years.
So this incredible story gives us one essential thematic point. Job's suffering was instigated by Satan, the accuser. His primary goal is to distort truth and plant doubt. Satan's original lie was, Job only worships you because you bless him. He's always trying to twist faith into a transaction, whispering in your ear, you must have done something wrong.
And that is why the conclusion contrasts the accuser with the advocate. The source material is very clear that Jesus doesn't accuse us, he defends us. The text states, "If anyone sins, we have an advocate before the Father, Jesus Christ, the righteous one." The cross, the sources say, silenced every lie. The test proved that pure, unconditional faith exists, regardless of the hedge.
The practical application here for you is powerful. Job teaches us that faithfulness doesn't mean an easy life. We will face pain in moments we absolutely do not understand because God's ways are just profoundly higher than ours. It is absolutely okay to cry, to ask questions, to feel confused. Job did all of that, but the ultimate call is to choose trust, knowing God is good, even when the explanation for the suffering remains hidden. That struggle, the sources show us, is often what strengthens and shapes our faith.
This raises an important question.
What stands out to me is how the friends initially got it so right. The 7 days and 7 nights of silence, that initial powerful gesture of shared mourning before all the harmful judgment began, it reminds us of the sheer power of presence over any premature explanation.
And returning to that line we discussed, the source notes that even when he was suffering, Job did not sin with his lips. Consider the sharp, crucial difference between Job expressing his pain and anguish, wishing he had never been born, and actively condemning God by charging him with wrongdoing. The source material forces you to find that precise, often blurry boundary between justified anguish and destructive accusation when you're facing the unknown.
We hope this deep dive helps you navigate the source material and provide some powerful new insights into the hardest questions of integrity and trust.